My boss refused to approve my vacation for months, so I ruined his holiday instead. I'll never forget the day it finally clicked for me. The moment when I realized I wasn't just dealing with a difficult boss. I was dealing with someone who thrived on control. Someone who wanted to keep me caged in, chained to my desk, while he strutted around like a king. You know how they say work-life balance matters? Not in our office. Not under Mr. Lewis. He had this way of making you feel like time didn't belong to you. Like every second of your life, every ounce of energy you had, was his property. For almost a year, I had been grinding non-stop in a downtown Chicago consulting firm. I wasn't the highest earner or the most brilliant strategist, but I worked damn hard. I took on extra projects, pulled late nights, and helped cover for coworkers who buckled under the pressure. I had earned a break. Hell, I needed one. I hadn't seen my parents in almost 3 years. They live overseas, and with the pandemic delays, canceled flights, and never-ending work demands, I hadn't managed to visit. This trip wasn't just a vacation for me, it was supposed to be a reunion. I'd planned everything down to the last detail. Tickets booked, vacation home reserved, family waiting with excitement. And then came the first no. I submitted my vacation request 6 weeks in advance, exactly by the book. I made sure no major deadlines overlapped. I even organized my workload so everything would run smoothly in my absence. But when I went to follow up, Mr. Lewis leaned back in his chair, smirk tugging at his lips, and said, "Denied. You're too essential right now. Clients would panic if you disappeared." It stung. But fine, I told myself I could wait a little longer. Except, the next time I asked, I got the same response. And the time after that. And the time after that. Every request I submitted was denied. Sometimes he'd give a vague excuse, like not a good time, and other times he'd just laugh and say, "Try again next quarter, maybe." At first, I thought it was just bad timing, but after months of rejection, it became clear. This wasn't about scheduling or priorities. This was about power. He was keeping me here because he could. And what made it worse? Mr. Lewis loved his vacations. He flaunted them, bragged about them, shoved them in our faces. While I was working 14-hour shifts, he'd strut into the office with a golden tan, grinning as he showed off photos of Tuscan villas, ski trips in Aspen, tropical getaways with his wife. He'd pass his phone around the office, chuckling while saying, "You've got to see this 5-star service, private pool, worth every penny." Meanwhile, I was eating takeout at my desk, staring at an untouched flight credit I couldn't use. The hypocrisy was unbearable. But what really broke me was the day he crumpled my vacation request right in front of me. It was a Friday morning. The office was buzzing, people wrapping up for the weekend. I walked over to his desk, placed the neatly filled out form on top, and asked if he had a moment to review it. He didn't even glance at it, just picked it up, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it into the trash bin with a flick of his wrist. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not going anywhere, Rohan. Not on my watch." Some people in the room laughed nervously. Others avoided eye contact. Me? I stood frozen, humiliation burning through me like fire. That was the moment. That was when the anger crystallized into something sharper, something colder. If he was going to take away my vacation, I decided then and there I was going to take his. If you've ever worked under a boss who sees you less as a human and more as a tool, then you know the kind of cage I was in. From the outside, our Chicago office looked impressive, sleek glass walls, a rooftop view of the river, the kind of place where you imagine successful careers are built. But once you were inside, you felt it immediately. The weight of control, the constant surveillance, the pressure to perform like your entire life depended on it. And in a way, it did. Mr. Lewis wasn't the kind of manager who inspired people. He was the kind who thrived on intimidation. A tall man with sharp suits and sharper words, he had perfected the art of keeping employees just scared enough to stay quiet. He loved micromanaging, not because it made the work better, but because it made him feel important. Emails at 11 p.m. Normal. Demands for just a quick report 5 minutes before the end of the day. Routine. publicly calling someone out for a minor typo in front of the entire team, his favorite sport. But his biggest weapon was denial of time off. See? Time was his currency. He could grant it, or he could take it away. And he wielded that power like a sadistic king. Need a sick day? Be prepared to prove it with medical documents and groveling. Family emergency? You'd better make up the hours by working weekends. And a vacation? Forget it. That was treated like you were asking for a golden throne. And me? I had been his favorite target lately. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because I was good at my job, and he didn't want me out of the office. Maybe because I was one of the younger employees and easier to push around. Or maybe because he just enjoyed breaking people who refused to quit. What made it unbearable wasn't just the workload. It was the double standard. Because while I was stuck inside this corporate hamster wheel, Mr. Lewis lived large. He had a second home in Florida, and every few months he'd vanish for a well-deserved break. I remember one Monday morning when he strolled into the office fresh from Cabo, beaming as if he hadn't left us drowning in spreadsheets all week. He handed out Mexican chocolates like some benevolent king returning from conquest. "You all kept things afloat while I was gone, right?" he asked, knowing damn well we'd been drowning. I hated how casual he was about it. As if his absence didn't wreck the team. As if his whims didn't put all the weight on our shoulders. And when I thought about my unused plane ticket, my parents waiting for me overseas, the family dinners I was missing year after year, it boiled inside me. I started noticing the smaller humiliations, too. Like how he'd check the office cameras when he was away, then email snarky comments about someone's long lunch break, or how he'd schedule last-minute client calls at 8 a.m. just to keep people sharp. He loved controlling people's time, even when he wasn't there. At some point, I realized it wasn't that he didn't trust me to take time off. He didn't want me to. It was about power. It always was. And here's the thing about cages. At first, you convince yourself you can live with them. You adapt. You shrink. You go through the motions. But eventually, if you're the kind of person who still dreams of freedom, something snaps. That's what was happening to me. Every rejection of my vacation request, every crumpled form, every smug smile, it was welding the bars of the cage tighter around me. But what Mr. Lewis didn't realize was this. I wasn't the kind of person to stay caged forever. If he was going to play games with my time, then I'd learn how to play with his. And when I did, he wouldn't see it coming. It all came to a head on a Wednesday morning. I had been counting down the weeks, carefully planning my vacation around a family reunion in Delhi. It wasn't just a trip, it was the first time in years I'd be seeing my parents, my cousins, my grandparents. We hadn't all been in the same room since before the pandemic, and I was desperate for it. I submitted my request 3 months in advance. I followed every HR policy to the letter. I even offered to train my backup and finish every major report before I left. And for weeks, there was silence. Finally, I walked into Mr. Lewis's office, my form in hand. He didn't even look up from his laptop. "Rohan, this isn't a good time." I swallowed my frustration. "Sir, I filed the request months ago. My family already bought the tickets. This means a lot to me." That's when he leaned back, folded his arms, and smirked. "Young man, this company needs soldiers, not tourists. You want a vacation? Build your career first. Earn it." That word tourist hit me like a slap. I wasn't asking to sip cocktails on a beach. I wanted to see my aging grandparents, who kept asking when I'd come home. My mother had sent me photos of them at the dinner table with an empty chair where I should have been sitting. But Mr. Lewis didn't care. To him, family was just an excuse, and employees were pawns to be moved on his board. Still, I tried once more. "Please, sir, I've covered all my tasks. I'll even log in remotely if needed." He cut me off. Request denied. Just like that. No discussion, no explanation. And then he twisted the knife. "You know, Rohan, sacrifice is what separates leaders from followers. Maybe one day you'll thank me for this." Thank him? I walked out of his office with my heart pounding, my palms sweating, and a knot in my stomach that felt like fire. I couldn't shake the thought. This man had just stolen something I could never get back. Time with my family, time with people who wouldn't be around forever. I went to my desk, pulled up my email, and typed out a message to HR. But halfway through, I stopped. I knew how it would go. HR always sided with management. They'd file it away under employee dissatisfaction, and nothing would change. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the plane ticket that was supposed to be mine. The departure date was circled in red on my calendar, and as the days crept closer, that red circle became a scar I couldn't ignore. I felt trapped, humiliated, powerless. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom: you either stay there, or you push back. And somewhere between staring at that ticket and replaying Mr. Lewis's smug smile in my head, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just going to swallow this. I wasn't going to let him dictate every inch of my life. If he thought he owned my time, he was about to learn what it felt like to have his stolen. That was the night the idea sparked. It wasn't fully formed yet, but I knew one thing. If Mr. Lewis was going to deny me my vacation, then I was going to ruin his. And the thought of it, the sheer poetic justice of it, was enough to make me smile for the first time in weeks. After that night, when the idea first sparked, I stopped acting like a man, waiting to be told what he could and couldn't do. I started watching everything. Not just the obvious calendar blocks, inbox status, the way people bowed when Lewis walked in, but the small, repeatable patterns that make systems predictable. You learn a lot about someone when you pay attention to how they manage their time. Some people skim calendar invites and trust that others will do things for them. Some people actually read the notes. Lewis was the former. He lived off assumptions and deferments. He showed up to make decisions at the last second. He relied on verbal confirmations, and he trusted the illusion of control more than any documentation. That combination of overconfidence plus corner cutting was my door. The first cracks I saw weren't dramatic. They were a recurring email thread that he never archived, a Slack channel he forgot to mute, a recurring vendor approval that always landed on his desk 2 days before a deadline. Small operational weak points that, if nudged, could create a cascade of inconvenience at precisely the right time. So I started to map them. I made a spreadsheet the way I always do when I need to see the whole picture. Column A, recurring processes. Column B, the person who owned it. Column C, the lead time. Column D, the single point of failure. It was clinical and ugly and absolutely necessary. There it was in black and white how dependent the office was on Lewis's last-minute approvals, and how little redundancy existed when he was away. For a man who loved the appearance of indispensability, he was lazy about the mechanics. He never set backups. He never delegated approval permissions. If his Wi-Fi went down in Tuscany, the office would feel it. If he forgot to sign a travel expense, the finance team would scramble. These weren't mistakes I could weaponize with a mic drop. These were leverage I could edge into place without anyone noticing. The next discovery was more human. People make micro-behaviors into routines. Lewis had a morning ritual. Coffee at 8:30 inches, the bullpen, then a 15-minute touch base with a selected few. He had a ritual email draft he forwarded unedited, phrased the same way so many times that the subject lines were identical. Predictability creates openings. There were other cracks too, the kind you feel more than see. Whispers in the corridor about him missing dates or double booking meetings. A few aside comments from coworkers about how irritated they were by his last-minute pivots. Even HR mentioned in passing that he'd been on a leadership development course twice in the past year, which to a curious person reads like a man rehearsing for theater rather than learning to lead. None of this was proof. None of this was dramatic. But if you're building a plan that needs the elements of surprise and timing, you don't look for fireworks, you look for slow-burning tinder. So I began to seed small things that would look natural. Nothing illegal. Nothing that would get me fired for wrongdoing. Just tiny operational nudges that would magnify the cracks when the time came. First, I made sure meetings that required his sign-off were scheduled during his blocked vacation days, nothing that would break a client relationship, but enough to create pressure. I coordinated with colleagues in other departments, under the guise of workload planning, to push milestone dates forward by a day or two. It had to look like good project management, not malicious manipulation. Second, I cleaned up the handoff processes that he always skimmed. I documented procedures, created checklists, and quietly placed them where anyone could use them. Shared folders, team wikis, The little how to handle client X doc no one had bothered to write. The irony was delicious. By appearing to be helpful, I made the dependency on his approvals even clearer. Third, I started logging every time he said the words we all remembered. You're essential. We can't lose momentum. Hold that approval until I return. I wrote them down, dated them, and saved them in a private folder. If anyone accused me later of manufacturing narrative, I'd show the receipts. I also asked harmless-sounding questions in meetings. If Lewis is out next week, who's the backup for client Y? And watched faces. People looked at each other and shrugged. There was no consistent answer. No policy, just hope and improvisation. That lack of contingency was the gap I needed. There were small acts of courage, too. Not mine alone. I found an ally in Priya from client services. Quietly, over a lunch we pretended was about CV templates, I mentioned that my family was planning something and asked if she'd ever noticed how approvals got stacked when Lewis was away. She laughed, then sighed, then said, "All the time. We always panic." She didn't realize how big those two words were. She was the kind of person who would be useful in a pinch. By the end of 2 weeks, my map looked ugly and promising all at once. A web of single points of failure. A man who loved being indispensable, but who didn't actually make things redundant. And a team that was too scared to go to bat for itself. That's when the plan crystallized. If I could time deliverables so they needed his direct input during his absence, and if I could ensure his remote access was spotty at a crucial moment, then his perfect vacation would become a strain he couldn't carry from a beach in Italy. But I also knew the single biggest risk: making it look deliberate. If anyone smelled revenge on my breath, it would ruin everything. So my moves had to be invisible, surgical, seemingly altruistic. I started to position myself as the solution. If I could present contingency plans that made sense to everyone and do it without fanfare, then the day the dominoes fell, I'd be the calm center, not the suspect. People trust the person who makes sense in the chaos. That had to be me. There were tense moments. Once, I left a folder labeled Client X, Urgent Approval, on the shared drive with a note in the comments, "Needs sign-off by Friday." I didn't lock it down. I made it visible. A junior manager pinged me asking what this was. I replied, casually, "Just tidying the queue since Lewis will be out." He moved it into the queue, assuming I had the boss's blessing. I bit my tongue and smiled. That was the point, small nudges that looked like common sense. And then, the first real sign of vulnerability. Lewis double-booked himself. He'd agreed to be at a charity gala the night before his flight, and unbeknownst to him had also promised to do crisis calls with a big client. When I found the conflicting emails, I almost laughed out loud in my cube. It felt like God, or fate, or karmic math was finally doing the heavy lifting for me. But I couldn't celebrate yet. Planning is one thing, execution is another. For every opening I'd found, there were a dozen ways it could close if I slipped. The only thing I could do was keep reinforcing the infrastructure of my plan. Update the docs, confirm the backups, but not the ones he trusted. Nudge the deadlines just a hair forward. And quietly make myself indispensable, not by stealing credit like he did, but by being the one who made sure nothing fell apart. On a Thursday morning, as I watched Lewis stride into the office with his usual swagger, he passed by my desk and tossed an offhand comment over his shoulder. "Don't wreck anything while I'm gone." He thought it was a joke, a casual admonition from the guy who lived to be needed. But I looked at him, calm and steady, and said nothing. Inside, I felt the map of his weak points humming like a tuned instrument. Everything was in place. The trap was invisible now, woven into deadlines, into handoffs, into the very rhythms of the office. That night I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to watch the office empty out, to see the rhythm settle. People hugged, signed out, and made weekend plans. Lewis had one more meeting to settle, then he'd be gone. He'd leave his kingdom in our hands, confident and smug. On the subway ride home, I checked my phone and noticed his calendar. Flight out Sunday, return Saturday. 2 weeks. 17 days of possibility. My pulse quickened, not with fear, but with a quiet, cold anticipation. The trap felt real now. The only thing left was waiting for him to walk into it. But that's the cruel thing about waiting. It gives you time to imagine the worst. And as I stared at the blinking cursor of my task list, I realized there was one more variable I hadn't accounted. For one person who had the power to unravel everything if they decided to act, Mr. Lewis himself. Would he be careless enough to play into it? Or would he, the man who denied me my life, see the threads and snip them away? Either way, I told myself, I had done everything a careful man could do. The next move belonged to fate. And fate, in this case, wore a suitcase and a boarding pass. Sunday came faster than I expected. Lewis strutted into the office that morning with a suitcase leaning against his desk and a grin plastered on his face. He spent the day basking in farewells, slapping backs, tossing "don't screw up without me" jokes, pretending he was the glue that kept the company together. No one realized how fragile that glue really was. By noon, he had signed off the last email, given one final pep talk, and wheeled his bag out the door. The second he was gone, the air in the office felt different, lighter. People laughed more freely. Even Priya whispered to me, "It's like we've been let out of detention." But beneath that relief was the scaffolding of the trap I had laid, and I could feel it vibrating. The first 3 days were uneventful, exactly as I had planned. Lewis was posting photos from his balcony in Positano, holding wine glasses against golden sunsets, writing smug captions about well-earned rest. I smiled at every post because I knew what was coming. Deadlines I had quietly shifted forward were inching closer. Vendor approvals landed in the queue without his signature, and because he hadn't designated a backup, the requests sat there, unanswered, growing more urgent with each passing hour. By Wednesday, the first crack split wide open. A client deliverable needed sign-off, and the team assumed Lewis had already handled it. He hadn't. Emails began stacking in the shared inbox. Panic simmered. "Has anyone heard from him?" one project manager asked in a meeting. I shrugged, carefully neutral. "I think he's away this week. Did he set a delegate?" Silence. Uneasy glances. No one wanted to admit the truth. He hadn't. That's when I made my move, not the big reveal. Not yet, but the first nudge. I casually pulled up a handover checklist I had written weeks ago. "We could adapt this to get things moving," I said. It looked like efficiency. It looked like initiative. But what it really was me tightening the vise. Then came Thursday, the day everything began to buckle. Lewis had promised to attend a high-priority video call with a major client. It was scheduled weeks ago, before his trip was finalized. He had confirmed twice, but in his arrogance, he assumed he could patch in from wherever he was. I knew better. I had checked the time zones, the Wi-Fi reliability in that part of Italy, even the fact that the client insisted on screen-sharing sensitive files that couldn't be pulled up on a phone. At 9 a.m., the team assembled in the boardroom. The client logged in. Everyone waited, and Lewis didn't show. 10 minutes ticked by. Then 15. Finally, the client frowned and said, "We'll reschedule. But this is disappointing." The meeting ended. Tension thick in the room. And that was when I said it, in the calmest voice I could muster. "We might need to rethink how dependent we are on one person's availability." Heads nodded. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. It wasn't accusation, it was observation. But the seed was planted. His absence wasn't a quirk anymore. It was a liability. That evening, my phone buzzed. A WhatsApp message from Lewis. "Internet sucks here. Cover for me if needed. Don't let anything slip." I stared at that message for a long time. The irony was delicious. The man who had denied me even 2 weeks with my family was now begging me to cover his blind spots. And I did cover just enough. Just enough to keep the building from burning down completely. But I left the small fires smoldering, visible enough that everyone noticed the smoke. Friday was the breaking point. The finance team stormed into the bullpen, frantic about unpaid invoices waiting on Lewis's approval. Vendors were threatening to halt deliveries. The operations team couldn't move forward without a signature on procurement forms. Everyone was running in circles. And where was their fearless leader? Uploading Instagram stories of seafood pasta by the Amalfi Coast. By noon, the office was in chaos. People muttered under their breath, openly cursing his name. The mask of invincibility he wore was slipping, and I could see it happening in real time. That's when Priya leaned over to me and whispered, "If he doesn't fix this soon, people are going to turn on him." And I smiled, though I didn't let her see it. That was exactly the point. The beauty of a trap isn't when it's set. It's when the prey walks into it without realizing the jaws are closing. And by the end of that first week, Lewis was walking straight into mine. What he didn't know was that the second week, the busiest week of the quarter, was where the real damage would unfold. Critical reports, client renewals, board-level presentations, all lined up neatly like dominoes. And all of them waiting for his signature. I didn't come up with the plan in one night. It started as a flicker, a whisper of an idea that grew every time I looked at Lewis's smug face or scrolled through his calendar. He had Italy blocked out for 2 solid weeks, 2 weeks of villas, wine, Michelin stars. And I realized something. If he could deny me my freedom, I could deny him his. But revenge like this, it couldn't be sloppy. Sloppiness gets caught. Sloppiness gets punished. What I needed was precision. So I began quietly, carefully, in ways that wouldn't draw a shred of suspicion. I started volunteering for the tedious work nobody else wanted. Calendar management, client scheduling, internal project updates. Rohan's just being proactive, people said. He's reliable. And that was exactly the mask I wanted them to see. Behind that mask, I was moving chess pieces. I began nudging deadlines ever so slightly. Not enough for anyone to notice, but just enough that the most critical deliverables started clustering during the exact 2 weeks Lewis would be gone. Client meetings that could have been scheduled earlier, I shifted them. Reports that normally would have gone to the VP, I rerouted them for Lewis's oversight. All perfectly justifiable. On paper. To everyone else, it looked like I was planning ahead, being efficient. But what I was really doing was setting up a perfect storm. And here's the beauty of it. None of it felt forced. The projects were real. The clients were demanding. The deadlines were natural. I didn't create the chaos, I simply arranged it so that every domino would fall during Lewis's absence. The trickiest part was disguising my hand. I never said let's do this during July, or let's push it to Lewis's vacation. No. I used vague phrases like to align with leadership availability, or per Lewis's earlier suggestion. I always tied my changes back to him, even when he hadn't said a single word, and he fell right into it. Every time I forwarded a meeting note for his approval, he'd reply with a casual, fine, or okay. He thought it was routine. He didn't realize those little one-word emails were the ropes I was binding him with. By the end of the month, the board presentation, the quarterly client review, 2 major procurement sign-offs, and a crucial compliance audit were all stacked neatly into those 2 weeks, like an intricate puzzle where every piece led back to his name. I can't lie, part of me worried someone might notice. Maybe another manager would raise an eyebrow, or the VP would ask why everything funneled to July. But no one did. Why? Because in corporate life, people see what they expect to see. And everyone expected Rohan, the quiet workhorse, to be doing his job. That invisibility was my greatest weapon, and when I finally looked at the finished calendar packed, overloaded, and completely dependent on Lewis's signature, I felt the first spark of satisfaction. I had built the cage, and soon, Lewis would lock himself inside it. The office thought I was helping. Lewis thought he was in control. But in reality, every approval he gave was another link in the chain that would shatter his vacation. The setup was only half the battle. A good trap isn't just about building it, it's about making sure the prey doesn't see it until it's too late. I knew Lewis. He wasn't the sharpest when it came to details, but he had an instinct for blame. The man could smell weakness like a shark smells blood. If anything about the scheduling looked unnatural, he'd sniff it out, point the finger, and somehow spin the mess back on me. So, I had to vanish behind my own work. I started laying down what I like to call corporate camouflage. Small things that made it look like I was just being efficient. I dropped quick notes like, "Hey, just aligning with the compliance team's availability. Rescheduled per client preference. Following your earlier approval. See? Nothing suspicious. Just boring admin stuff." I also left a trail, but a fake one. Every email, every calendar invite, every adjustment I made, I tagged it back to some logical reason. If anyone ever dug through the paper trail, they'd find nothing but normal business operations. On the surface, it looked airtight. And yet, I couldn't get too comfortable. My heart would spike every time Lewis passed by my desk or glanced at me during a meeting. What if he saw through it? What if he noticed the clustering? But here's the thing about men like Lewis. Arrogance blinds them. He was too busy bragging about his Italian getaway, about the villa he rented, about how much wine he was going to drink by the pool. He didn't notice the storm gathering around him. Still, I couldn't leave it all to chance. So, I pulled in a few unwitting accomplices. Whenever a deadline shifted, I'd casually ask a coworker to confirm the date with a client, or double-check with procurement. They thought they were just helping out. In reality, they were reinforcing my setup, adding more witnesses to the official narrative. Later, if anyone asked why the calendar looked that way, it wouldn't just be my fingerprints. Other people would remember agreeing to it too. And here's the beauty of it. Because I spread the tasks around, I looked less involved. I wasn't the mastermind. I was just one of many people keeping the machine running. Meanwhile, the real machine was tightening the screws on Lewis's vacation. At night, when I got home, I'd open my laptop and stare at the calendar like a hunter watching his snare. Every box, every color-coded block was perfectly placed, and in the middle of it all was Lewis blissfully ignorant. The hardest part was playing dumb in meetings. When people casually mentioned, "Wow, July's looking packed," I had to shrug and smile like it was just a coincidence. "Yeah, must be the season," I'd say. Inside, I was grinning like the devil. Because July wasn't just busy. July was the cage I had built. And Lewis was already walking into it, blindfolded, suitcase in hand. He thought his only challenge was deciding which wine to sip in Tuscany. He had no idea his phone would be blowing up before his second glass. The day finally came. The day Lewis had been bragging about for weeks. The office buzzed with that strange mix of envy and relief. Envy because he was flying to Florence. Relief because we wouldn't have to deal with his micromanaging for a while. He strutted around like a king about to embark on a royal tour. Every sentence began with, "When I'm in Italy," or "You'll manage without me, right?" I played along, smiled at his jokes, nodded when he reminded us of his importance. Inside, though, I was calm, patient, because I already knew what was waiting for him on the other side of that flight. Before he left, he called the team together. "All right, people. Don't burn the place down while I'm gone." He laughed at his own joke, the kind of laugh that made your skin crawl. Then, as if rehearsed, he turned to me. "Rohan, you'll keep things steady. You're reliable. Just don't get any crazy ideas about vacations while I'm away." Everyone chuckled nervously. I chuckled too. But mine was different. Mine was the chuckle of a man watching his enemy walk right into a minefield. As he rolled his suitcase toward the elevator, I followed just close enough to deliver the final line. "Safe travels, Mr. Lewis," I said warmly. He smirked, gave me that arrogant little wink, and disappeared behind the elevator doors. The trap was now live. That night, I pictured him sipping his first glass of Chianti, probably snapping photos of cobblestone streets to post online. His Instagram would be flooded with sunsets and pasta dishes, hashtags like "Number La Dolce Vita." Meanwhile, back in Chicago, the calendar I'd crafted was about to start ticking like a bomb. 3 days in, the first deadline would drop. Another 2 days, a second. A week later, the big one, the report only he could sign, would detonate. Each one carefully timed, like dominoes falling, all pointing back to his absence. I could almost hear the gears grinding already. But the beauty of it? Nobody suspected a thing. In the office, I was just another employee, tapping away at spreadsheets, answering emails, smiling politely. To my coworkers, I was steady, dependable Rohan. To Lewis, I was harmless. But I wasn't harmless. I was patient. And patience is the sharpest weapon of all. The next morning, I checked my inbox before heading to work. Already, the first cracks were forming. A client email marked urgent, confusion about a rescheduled presentation, A hint of panic. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and smiled. The storm had begun. And Louis? He was still sleeping off his first bottle of wine, thousands of miles away, oblivious. He thought he had escaped to paradise. He didn't know his paradise was about to turn into a cage of missed deadlines, furious calls, and chaos that would follow him across oceans. The first 3 days after Louis left, the office felt lighter. People smiled more. The air wasn't so suffocating without his constant micromanagement. I could finally breathe, almost forgetting about the storm I'd set in motion. Almost. On day 3, it started. At 9:12 a.m. sharp, an email exploded into the team inbox, marked urgent. A major client, the kind that single-handedly accounted for a quarter of our quarterly revenue, was furious. A report that was supposed to be finalized and presented was nowhere near ready. The timeline had shifted, and no one could explain why. Except I knew why. Louis had signed off on that reschedule weeks earlier. His name, his approval, his calendar, the digital breadcrumbs all pointed to him. By lunchtime, the phone calls started. First a project manager, then HR, then even one of the VPs, all asking where Louis was, why deadlines were being missed, who approved the changes. His absence had become impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Louis was living his la dolce vita. I could picture him at that exact moment, sitting under a striped umbrella at a Florence cafe, glass of wine in one hand, pasta fork in the other, scrolling through his phone between selfies, probably captioning something ridiculous like, "Earning my carbs after a year of hard work." Number, vacation vibes. What he didn't know was that, back in Chicago, his phone had already lit up with frantic messages. By dinner, he'd have dozens, and then it got worse. Day 4. A second client blew up. This time, it was a high-stakes presentation, a proposal Louis himself insisted on owning. But without his presence, the slides weren't finalized, the data hadn't been validated, and no one else could step in. The client pulled out, losses mounted, fingers pointed. And guess whose name was on every approval email? Louis's. Day 5. The VP called me directly. "Rohan, what's going on? How are we this unprepared?" I played my part perfectly concerned, professional, but never defensive. "Honestly, sir, Louis approved all these schedules. I thought he wanted to handle it personally. He was very clear." The VP cursed under his breath. "Unbelievable. He's unreachable in Italy. We're getting hammered here." And just like that, the noose tightened. Now, imagine Louis at that moment, sitting at a candlelit dinner in Rome with his family, trying to enjoy tiramisu, when his phone buzzed again and again. First a vibration, then 2, then 5, until the table was lit up by the glow of dozens of unread messages. Clients panicking, colleagues demanding answers, his boss calling. His wife probably gave him a look. "Can't you just relax and put the phone down?" But he couldn't. Not anymore. Because the empire he thought he controlled was collapsing while he sipped wine under fairy lights. I slept like a baby that night. Day 6. Absolute chaos. The office was drowning. Deadlines imploded. HR flagged leadership failures. The VP's tone had shifted from frustrated to downright furious. Everyone was talking whispers in the break room, tense conversations in hallways. And the best part? Not a single person blamed me. Why would they? I had the evidence trail locked down tight. Every calendar invite, every timestamp, every email, all stamped with "Approved by Mr. Louis." Louis's vacation wasn't a vacation anymore. It was turning into a 14-day corporate crucifixion. By the end of that week, word was spreading. Louis is screwing everything up from Italy. He hadn't even realized yet that the worst was still to come, because one final, immovable deadline was waiting like a landmine, time to explode right under his feet. And he wouldn't see it until it was too late. The chaos so far? That was just the prelude, the appetizer. The real feast was still coming. I had designed the entire setup around one immovable deadline, a project so critical, so tightly regulated, that it required a single, final, digital signature to move forward. No backups, no substitutes, no plan B. And that signature belonged exclusively to Mr. Lewis. I made sure of it. It wasn't malicious coding or sabotage, nothing illegal. It was simply arranging the work so that responsibility fell squarely where he insisted it belonged. On his desk, on his approval, on his authority. For weeks, I let him think he was the irreplaceable linchpin. I even flattered him. "This one really needs your expertise, sir. Nobody else could sign off on it." He loved that line. Smirked every time. And every smirk dug his grave deeper. Day 7. The deadline arrived. The client, a massive corporate account, was waiting on a compliance report. Without Lewis's digital signature, the deal would stall, penalties would kick in, and the client would walk. At 8:45 a.m., the first frantic emails started rolling in. By 9:30, the VP was pacing the floor. By 10, every eye in the office was glued to inboxes, waiting for the signature that never came. Lewis was the only one who could pull the trigger. Meanwhile, in Italy, he was probably on a boat in Positano, sunglasses on, laughing with his family, maybe sipping champagne, maybe snapping selfies, blissfully unaware of the inferno about to consume him, until his phone buzzed. Once, twice, then 20 times. He tried to log into our secure system remotely, but here's the beauty of it. Our firm had strict geosecurity protocols. Remote logins from certain flagged countries required additional authentication. And Italy? Oh, Italy was flagged. His login attempt was flagged as suspicious activity. Locked out. The system that Lewis himself bragged about implementing years earlier had become his own executioner. By noon, the office was chaos. People shouting over cubicles, phones ringing non-stop, clients demanding explanations. I sat quietly at my desk, typing updates with an air of helpless concern. Unfortunately, this one really does require Mr. Lewis's sign-off. I explained to the VP, feigning frustration. "Can't someone else do it?" he barked. I shook my head. "Not according to compliance protocols. His digital key is the only one authorized." Silence. Then the VP swore so loudly the entire floor went quiet. Now imagine Lewis. It's 1 a.m. in Italy. His wife's asleep. His kids are snoring in the next room. And he's hunched over his laptop, drenched in sweat, hammering the keyboard. Every failed login attempt makes him more desperate. He's calling IT, begging HR, cursing under his breath. But it's no use. By morning, the penalties are locked in. The client sends a formal notice. Deal terminated. Losses in the 6 figures. And there's Lewis, thousands of miles from home, watching his empire crumble while his vacation rots around him. The moment I had engineered had arrived. The trap had sprung. The signature that only he could provide had sealed his downfall. And the best part? No one suspected me. To them, it looked like Lewis had overextended himself, failed to delegate, and then abandoned ship in the middle of a storm. I had built the perfect cage and locked him inside it. By the time Lewis booked an emergency flight home, the VP was already preparing his reception. The humiliation waiting for him in that office would make his ruined vacation feel like a minor inconvenience. When Lewis finally staggered back into the office, it wasn't the triumphant return of a sun-tanned leader who'd conquered Italy. No, he came back looking wrecked. His hair was disheveled, shirt wrinkled, and dark bags hung under his eyes. I swear, he looked 10 years older. Jet lag, stress, and fury had carved trenches into his face. The man who once strutted through the office like a king now looked like a beaten soldier crawling back from war. But what really made me smile was the timing. Because Lewis didn't stroll in quietly. No, he walked straight into a full-blown emergency meeting. The VP had called everyone into the glass-walled conference room to discuss the collapse of the client deal. When Lewis walked in, trying to reassert control, all eyes turned toward him, and for the first time, nobody looked impressed. "Lewis," the VP said coldly, "nice of you to finally join us." The sarcasm was thick enough to choke on. Lewis tried to puff up his chest, slipping back into that arrogant tone. "Well, if my team had handled things properly." But the VP cut him off. Sharp. Deadly. Don't. Don't you dare blame your team. I've seen the emails. I've seen the calendar approvals. Every deadline, every deliverable, every client meeting was signed off by you. Lewis's face drained of color. He stammered. He actually stammered. I didn't. That was supposed to be... The VP leaned forward across the table, eyes narrowing. You failed. You failed this company. You failed the client. And you failed your own team. And don't think I haven't heard about the vacation denials, the public humiliation, the games you've been playing with your staff. That was my moment of quiet victory. Because I knew HR had pulled the records. They'd unearthed every petty denial, every mocking remark he'd made about me and others. His cruelty wasn't just whispered about anymore. It was on the record. The room was dead silent. Some people wouldn't even look at him. Others watched with barely concealed glee. For years, Lewis had made a career out of belittling us, tightening his grip, making everyone feel small. Now, in front of all of us, he was being stripped bare. He tried one last, desperate move. Sir, with all due respect, this isn't entirely on me. I wasn't here. The VP slammed his hand on the table. Exactly. You weren't here, and you designed it that way. You left no backups, no delegation, no contingency. You wanted to be the hero, Lewis, but instead you sank the ship. The words hung in the air like a final verdict. By the time the meeting adjourned, Lewis wasn't a leader anymore. He was a liability, and everyone knew it. He walked out of the room, shoulders slumped, avoiding eye contact. The same man who once boasted about being indispensable now looked like he couldn't even hold himself together. And the whispers began immediately. Not behind his back right there. In earshot. Unbelievable. Cost us 6 figures. Did you see the VP's face? He's done. It was the kind of public humiliation you don't recover from. Not in a company like ours. Not in Chicago, where reputations travel faster than the wind off Lake Michigan. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just sat there quietly, taking notes, looking like the diligent analyst I'd always been. But inside, I was savoring every second. The king had fallen, and the court had witnessed his collapse. What followed wasn't immediate termination, it was worse. A slow, grinding fall from grace, where Lewis lost not just his position, but the respect of every single person who once feared him. The thing about public humiliation is that it doesn't just bruise the ego. It sets off a chain reaction. After that meeting, Lewis didn't just lose credibility. He lost something far worse, the fear factor. For years, people had walked on eggshells around him. He thrived on intimidation, the sharp remarks, the fake smiles, the veiled threats. But once the VP tore him apart in front of the team, the spell broke. Suddenly, everyone saw him for what he was, a fraud in a suit. But that was only the beginning. 2 days later, HR summoned me. At first, I felt a flash of panic. Had I been too obvious? Did they suspect my role in all of this? Instead, the HR rep leaned in and asked gently, Rohan, we've been reviewing Mr. Lewis's management practices. Would you be comfortable sharing your experiences with us? That was my green light. I laid everything out. The denied vacation requests, the public mockery, the crumpled paper tossed into the trash in front of my peers, the late-night emails demanding pointless revisions. Every story I told painted a picture of a man who abused authority not to lead but to crush. And the best part? HR already had corroboration. Apparently, after Lewis's meltdown in Italy, other employees had come forward too. Stories poured in, unfair performance reviews, threats disguised as coaching, vacations denied for flimsy reasons. It turned out I wasn't the only one simmering with resentment. I was just the one who'd acted first. The investigation grew teeth. IT pulled his email logs. They found messages dripping with condescension. They found him approving meetings during his own trip with no backup plan. They even unearthed chat transcripts where he mocked staff to his favorites. And then came the kicker. Remember those mocking lines he used to throw at me? Clients won't even notice if you disappear. HR had them, word for word. Multiple witnesses had heard him say it. They went into his file alongside every single denied vacation request I had submitted over 8 months. It wasn't just mismanagement anymore. It was documented abuse of power. The company moved fast. Too fast for Louis to spin it. One Friday morning, he was called into a closed-door meeting with HR and the VP. He emerged an hour later looking pale and hollow. No swagger, no smirk, just a broken man clutching a folder of paperwork. By Monday, the announcement came. Louis was being demoted. Not fired, the company was careful to frame it as a leadership restructuring. But inside the office, we all knew the truth. He had been stripped of his title, his direct reports reassigned, and his projects handed over to others. The once feared boss was now just another middle manager, tucked in a corner office nobody cared about. And the ripple effect? Immediate. The whispers turned into open laughter. People mimicked his old arrogance behind his back. Some even joked about taking a Louis vacation, meaning booking a trip and not telling anyone until it imploded. His reputation, the one he'd built on manipulation and control, had crumbled overnight. I caught him looking at me once across the break room. His eyes burned with suspicion, maybe even recognition. But he couldn't prove a thing. To him, it looked like his own arrogance had brought him down. And in a way, it had. I just gave fate a little nudge. What made it all the sweeter was the poetic balance. For months, he'd told me vacations were unnecessary, that I wasn't irreplaceable. And yet, his entire career had collapsed because he couldn't let go of his own vacation. His downfall was tied to the very weapon he used to control me. Justice wasn't just served. It was plated, garnished, and served back to him ice cold. I arrived at work the Monday, looking sharper and calmer than ever. Colleagues who once avoided eye contact with me now stopped to greet. The whispers had changed no longer about me being a pushover, but about how I had pulled off something almost legendary without ever lifting my voice. But the fallout for my boss was far from over. The clients that I had arranged meetings with while Louis was away were furious. They had flown in expecting the man in charge, only to be met with confusion, excuses, and half-prepared presentations. Louis had been forced to cut his vacation short and rush back, humiliated, only to fumble even more under the pressure. Management had taken notice. At the weekly executive meeting, higher-ups questioned why critical client schedules had been mishandled. Louis tried to spin the story, blaming last-minute miscommunication and even hinting at me being responsible for the scheduling mess. But by then, the narrative had already shifted in my favor. The clients themselves had sent follow-up emails praising me for being the only professional presence during the chaos. They mentioned my patience, clarity, and preparation qualities they said were the only thing that salvaged their trust in the company. It was a masterstroke I hadn't even planned. The tension in the office grew thicker each day. Louis, once smug and untouchable, now looked over his shoulder constantly. His booming confidence had turned into curt replies and nervous micromanagement. He seemed smaller somehow, as though the humiliation of being dragged back from vacation had broken the illusion of authority he once wielded. For me, this was the sweetest part of the revenge, the ripple effect. I had shifted the balance of power in the office. People no longer feared Louis the way they once had, because they had seen proof that he could be beaten.
Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this, go watch the one of the left and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel for more tales of triumph over injustice and a saga of ultimate revenge.